really asking the question of the price of inaction and what that leads to in light of what we've seen in 20th century history. Your thoughts?
Well, we certainly know about the price of inaction. The 20th century is a good instructor on that. But inaction is what led us to where we are now with the Middle East in flames. It was, and this group ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, started out, I mean, they were in Iraq, but they really got powerful fighting with the insurgency in Syria. And then they exported that strength back into Iraq. And why was Syria allowed to collapse? I mean, all of these things are tied together and are the consequence of flawed policies of the last 5 years. I mean, it's no wonder that the other team wants to go back to 2003 or, even further and blame somebody else for this, because the case against Obama is so strong on all of this stuff. And it's not true that the other team especially is saying, oh, well, there's not a lot we can do about it. Let's let the Iranians handle it. Oh, there's a good plan. Let's get Iranian troops into Iraq. We have the head of the Quds Force of Iran's elite units meeting with the Maliki government in Baghdad right now, discussing that. And we have our Secretary of State saying, oh, yeah, let's have a discussion about it. No, we don't want that to happen. Let's back up our Iraqi ally like we said we were going to do. And if this ISIS group is moving from a guerrilla war phase into a conventional war phase, if they're starting to act more like a real army than just a bunch of guys, out in the hills somewhere, well, then they're a target. Then we can bomb them. Let's nail their convoys as they move between cities. It's the desert. It's the open desert. There's nowhere for them to hide. We can go in there and devastate these people if they make a move on Baghdad. And we should be preparing for that contingency right now. We don't need the Iranians in there, and we don't need boots on the ground either. We could just have some special forces, but primarily air power, cruise missiles, B-2, B-1, B-52 bombers taking care of this. We have A-10s in there. Obama wasn't cutting that program. Lots of things that we can do before we just sort of hand it to the Iranians, because, number one, we don't want Iran getting any ideas about extending their power. And number two, I don't see how pitting Shiite Iran against Sunni extremists with other countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt watching this very nervously, I don't see how that is going to help that.
Let's go to cut number 19. And I think this really speaks volumes, because President Bush did outline in a speech in 2008 what you just described and the consequence. Roll it.
Iraq is the convergence point for two of the greatest threats to America in this new century: Al-Qaeda and Iran. If we fail there, Al-Qaeda would claim a propaganda victory of colossal proportions, and they could gain safe havens in Iraq from which to attack the United States, our friends, and our allies. Iran would work to fill the vacuum in Iraq, and our failure would embolden its radical leaders and fuel their ambitions to dominate the region. The Taliban in Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda in Pakistan would grow in confidence and boldness. And violent extremists around the world would draw the same dangerous lesson they did from our retreats in Somalia and Vietnam. This would diminish our nation's standing in the world and lead to massive humanitarian casualties and increase the threat of another terrorist attack on our homeland.
And Jim, you mentioned the neighbors and the countries in the region of their response to this vacuum that's filled with a battle between Al-Qaeda and Sunni Al-Qaeda or ISIS and Shia Iran. and the notion that, oh, great, they're just killing each other, and isn't that a good thing because an enemy, can't they both lose? Similar to what Reagan spoke to with the Iran war, which was contextually different in the overall sense of what we're describing, but there are similarities as well. My question to you is, the neighbors, Saudi Arabia and Jordan, and those in regional people impacted regionally by this, not just neighbors. Tell me, what does it spell? Because like with Maliki, if he doesn't feel like he's, or Karzai, if they don't feel like they've got support, we have no influence on their response. Their response is either going to be to ally with these despicable characters or to protect against, which builds into more nuclear weapons, more war, and more instability for our greatest ally, I would argue, in the world, Israel. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, there's no good answer that doesn't involve us. If all of the answers involve us sitting on the sidelines or not being involved in this in some way, then it's just going to lead to worse stuff. There's no side that we want to win in a contest between the Iranians and radical Sunni Al-Qaeda type groups. I mean, we want both sides to lose, but in fact, both sides are kind of winning right now. The radicals are seizing territory, they're raising their profile, they're attracting recruits. They got $400 million from, looting Iraqi government safes. They've captured arms and equipment. I even saw one report. I haven't confirmed this to my satisfaction, but I saw a report that said they captured some aircraft, some jet aircraft. What, terrorists running around in jet aircraft? I mean, the only good thing there is that we could probably shoot them down, but we can't shoot them down if we're not in it. And who knows what they can use that stuff for? And meanwhile, the Iranians are just going to extend their influence. It's going to embolden them to continue with their nuclear program. Why in the world should they sign agreements with the United States giving away their ace in the hole, their nuclear program, if we're behaving like such a weak, silly country? What's their incentive for responding to us if we're so weak we can't even deal with this ragtag army riding down the desert road in Toyota trucks? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just what's the point of it? So I really don't see how it benefits us to sit back and let other actors decide this. The Saudis are already supporting the Sunni radicals in Syria. I mean, that's already out there. They've been doing that for a couple of years. In fact, they declared about a year ago that they were going to continue to do that because the United States was failing to take action. So it just goes to show that all of this instability and chaos is a direct result of the United States creating a vacuum, just like George Bush said, incidentally, 6 years ago.
And so, in being right and understanding that there's the information war and there's the information vacuum that people are making decisions on. Tell me, Jim, just because of time purposes, I want to ask this question. What did you make of the capture of the alleged Benghazi terrorist today?
Oh, well, I hope they asked him why he was so mad about that YouTube video. I think that's critical intelligence that we need to know.
All right. Now, you've outlined a plan to move ahead. Do you see a major war in our future in light of the chaos that has been created through the policies or lack of attention to our national security from the Obama administration? Is that something in 2016? Do you see us on the verge of war for survival, in essence, with a more organized and better funded, more control, with our enemy of radical Islamists?
Well, yeah, at the very least, that's going to continue. They're just getting stronger.
Mm-hmm.
They're not on the run, as the president likes to say. He keeps talking about core Al-Qaeda, which is like a couple guys, you know. He has never conceptualized this war correctly as a war with a hostile ideology. He just wants to talk about a very small group of Al-Qaeda leaders, you know, Osama bin Laden, of course, is dead, and a few others, and not talk about the rising threat of groups like ISIS, who are exactly the same. And in fact, ISIS started out as part of Al-Qaeda, so don't tell me it's that different. But we have them getting stronger. We have the Iranians getting stronger. The Chinese are pushing their claims in the South China Sea and elsewhere. They're projecting power. We have Russia still doing its stuff in Ukraine. That's fallen off the news cycle. But you know what? It's even worse there now. You have people dying. You have Russian tanks moving into Ukraine in the hands of these so-called rebels. Where in the world is President Obama increasing stability? He said that, you know, the tide of war is receding, the planet is less violent than it ever has been. What planet is he referring to?
That's where we'll have to leave it, but that's a great question. As I said, I think we're dealing with a delusional administration that is in really bad need of a tuna sandwich to get some protein to the melon and a psychiatrist of some form to bring him in touch with reality. It's just outrageous. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for your article. I posted it. I figured it'd be all right on the Facebook. It's wonderful, and we appreciate your analysis. We could go back 2009, and you pretty much detailed what we are seeing in some form as a result of these types of policies. So we appreciate your wisdom, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Crane.
Crane Durham's nothing but truth. Honor your life, compassion your heart. Always keep the faith in Jesus Christ. We'll see you next time.